It wasn't a death threat, just something designed to kill a reputation. An unmarked envelope slid under the Historical Society's heavy oak door, carrying a single black and white photo meant to explode like a grenade. The image was from 30 years ago, a desperate, disheveled woman standing outside a notorious biker bar that burned down decades ago. That woman was Clara Vance. Today, she's the 62-year-old archivist of Willow Creek, the guardian of the town's past. But in that photo, she looked like a scandal with a pulse. Someone wanted her destroyed. To understand why, you have to understand Clara. She wasn't just the archivist. She was the one person in town you couldn't intimidate. And that made her dangerous to anyone who depended on secrets. She had just challenged a massive zoning plan pushed by Elias Thorne, the richest man in town, the kind of guy who wore three-piece suits to casual lunches. He wanted to bulldoze the historic district for condos. Clara had the documents to stop him. And suddenly, this photo appears. Coincidence? Not in my line of work. The picture was meant to brand her as reckless, a former party girl with no moral authority to block Thorne's project. It worked with terrifying speed. By noon, the photo wasn't just online. It was everywhere. Digitized, uploaded, and weaponized across every forum in Willow Creek, turning a private moment into a public execution. The truth, that she was fleeing a violent domestic dispute and waiting for a cab, was deleted. In its place, a new narrative. Former biker gang associate running our heritage? Gossip became a verdict. Clara, the woman who spent decades preserving the truth, was buried under a lie. She locked herself in her office, blinds down, shame crushing her. She even told her assistant Jenny that maybe she was too tarnished to keep fighting. Jenny refused to accept that. Clara had mentored her for years, saved her, even. And Jenny knew that if Clara fell, Elias Thorne would rewrite the town's history to suit himself. So Jenny confronted Elias directly. He acted offended, polished, and fake concerned. He even hinted that Jenny could replace Clara if she stopped asking questions. Classic divide and conquer. Then came the breaking point. The town council announced an emergency meeting, officially about the budget. Unofficially, everyone knew it was about whether Clara Vance should be removed. Margaret Sterling had always supported the Historical Society, but she cared far more about protecting Willow Creek's image, and Elias knew exactly how to exploit that. He whispered just enough poison about Clara's sordid past to make Margaret believe the town's reputation and new investors were at risk. Now, Margaret sat at the head of the council table, face unreadable. Clara sat alone across from her, hands clenched tight. The air was so heavy it felt like everyone was waiting for an execution. Margaret didn't waste time. She held up the photo like it was evidence in a criminal trial. "Clara," she said, her voice rough and cold, "we value your years of service. But this image, it suggests a lifestyle incompatible with Willow Creek's values. Parents are worried about the volunteers." It was absurd. Clara worked with adults, not children, but the moral panic had already taken root. Clara opened her mouth to defend herself, but the verdict was written on every face around the table. Elias didn't need to say a word. He just sat in the shadows, watching the destruction he orchestrated with the cold, quiet satisfaction of a man who knows he's already won. The council voted to place Clara on unpaid leave pending a full review. Everyone knew what it meant. A polite firing, a public humiliation. And with Clara forced out of her office, the Historical Society became a graveyard. But Jenny still had her keys, and she wasn't going to let Elias win with a smear campaign. She knew she couldn't beat him in public. His money and influence controlled the narrative. So she fought him where he couldn't spin the truth, inside the archives. Clara had taught her that secrets hide in the smallest details. And Jenny threw herself into the Old Mill District files, the very land Elias wanted to bulldoze. She wasn't hunting for gossip about him. She was hunting for the truth about the land's history. Night after night, under the soft hum of the microfiche machine, she dug through glass plate negatives, tintypes, and century-old documents. She searched for inconsistencies, for ghosts left behind in old images. And that's when her training paid off. In 19th century photography, anything in motion vanished, but anything still for even a moment left a faint imprint. But those imprints reveal secrets. Buried in the corner of an 1895 street scene, she spotted a ghost, a blurred figure frozen just long enough to leave a mark. And in his hand, he was holding a sign that, according to Elias's timeline, should not have existed. It was a glitch, proof that the timeline Elias sold to the council was fabricated. The past itself was about to testify against him. Jenny rushed to Clara's house. Clara was packing boxes, preparing to disappear from the town she'd given her life to. "It doesn't matter, Jenny," Clara said, exhausted. "Even if his family history is a lie, no one cares. They only care about the scandal." But Jenny pushed back, reminding her of the very first lesson Clara ever taught her. History keeps the powerful honest. Then Jenny revealed something personal. She'd been dating Mark, a junior associate at Elias's firm. Lately, He'd been pressuring her to quit the archives, saying it was a dead-end job. Clara instantly recognized the pattern. "He's isolating you, Jenny," she said softly. "Just like my ex did in that photo. They make you doubt yourself so they can control you." It wasn't just about the archives anymore. It was about refusing to let predators, past or present, rewrite anyone's future. And this story mirrors something happening everywhere today: the fight over digital privacy and the right to be forgotten. Clara's life was being destroyed by a single out-of-context image, just like millions of people today who are judged by screenshots, posts, or fragments stripped of all nuance. The weapon hasn't changed, only the medium. Context is always the first casualty. But unlike the internet, archives deal in hard evidence. Jenny realized that Elias wasn't just trying to erase Clara. He was trying to erase the town's real history. And the reason he feared Clara was simple. She knew how to read the metadata buried in old records, details that could dismantle his empire. Sensing Jenny's persistence, Elias struck back. He filed a complaint accusing the Historical Society of mishandling private family documents, meaning the very files Jenny was investigating. He threatened to sue the town if the harassment didn't stop. It was a classic bully maneuver: cry victim while hiding the weapon behind your back. Terrified of litigation, the mayor ordered the archives locked. Jenny was barred from entering. For the first time, both Clara and Jenny were officially shut out. But before the locks changed, they managed to save one box of uncatalogued photos. They brought it to Clara's kitchen table, turning her small home into a battlefield headquarters. And in that moment, their dynamic transformed. They were no longer mentor and student. They were partners, two women who refused to let the truth drown under money, fear, and manufactured scandal. And this time, they weren't just defending Clara's reputation. They were preparing to expose the biggest lie Willow Creek had ever been built on. Clara saw herself in Jenny, the same fire for truth, the same instinct to run toward the facts instead of away from them. But she also saw the danger Jenny was in with Mark. His messages kept lighting up Jenny's phone, demands for her location, accusations that she was acting crazy for defending a disgraced woman. Clara stepped in gently but firmly. "Jenny," she said, "a man who respects you doesn't track your every move or mock your loyalty." It was the advice Clara wished someone had given her 30 years earlier. And by helping Jenny see the toxicity in her own relationship, Clara began to reclaim something she thought she'd lost forever: her own sense of authority. She was no victim. She was a survivor who finally understood the value of her scars. Then came the pivot, the moment the story shifted from personal drama to a full-blown crime thriller. They weren't looking at the disputed land. They were studying the building across from it in a 1922 photograph. Jenny leaned in with a magnifying glass. Reflected in the plate glass window of a barber shop was a razor-sharp mirror image of the street behind the photographer. And on the ancestral Thorne property hung a massive banner. It didn't say Thorne Estate. It read, "Property of Municipal Orphanage Trust." The room went silent. This wasn't just a zoning fight. If the land belonged to a public orphanage trust, it was illegal to sell it for private profit, ever. Elias wasn't just railroading Clara. He was trying to bulldoze a charitable trust, relying on the assumption that no one would think to examine a window reflection from a century-old photo. They had a smoking gun, but no allies. The mayor was terrified of Elias's threats. The council had already chosen a side. Their only hope was Margaret Sterling, the retired judge who led the vote against Clara. Strict, harsh, uncompromising, but loyal to the law. Jenny was terrified. Clara insisted. "Margaret isn't corrupt," she said. "Give her proof, and she'll choose the law over Elias." Margaret agreed to meet them at a quiet diner on the edge of town. When she arrived, she refused to even glance at Clara, speaking only to Jenny. "Make it quick," she said. "My reputation matters." Jenny placed the photo on the table, then slid a high-resolution scan beside it. The reflection enlarged. "Judge Sterling," she said, voice trembling but steadying, "you fired Clara to protect the town's reputation. But if you let a developer bulldoze land that legally belongs to a public trust, you aren't protecting the town. You're an accessory to fraud." Margaret put on her glasses. She examined the banner, then the land registry documents. A long, painful silence followed. Her expression didn't soften, but her eyes sharpened. She recognized the legal implications instantly: fraud, misrepresentation, grand larceny. Elias's ancestral land claim wasn't just weak, it was criminal. He wasn't bending the rules. He was stealing from the town. The cruel irony landed hard. The woman Margaret had fired for a moral lapse was the only person protecting Willow Creek from massive fraud. But Elias wasn't finished. He sensed momentum shifting. Mark, desperate and angry, broke into Jenny's apartment searching for the stolen files. He didn't find them, but the violation shattered Jenny's last illusion about him. She ended the relationship instantly, and the danger became real. Elias announced an emergency press conference the next morning to celebrate the groundbreaking of his project, hoping to finalize everything before anyone could question the deeds. This was rock bottom. The archives were locked. locked. The press was aligned with Elias, and all Clara and Jenny had was a blurry photo and a century-old reflection. That night, Clara sat in her dim living room. The shame of that old bar photo still stung, but something new was rising beneath it. Anger. Focus. Resolve. He thinks I'll stay quiet, Clara whispered. He thinks a woman my age, with a scandal attached to her name, will just fade. Jenny took her hand. Then let's make sure he's wrong. They devised not just a plan, but a moment. One Elias couldn't spin, silence, or overshadow. They wouldn't leak it to press allies he controlled. They would confront him in front of his own cameras. The next morning was cold and bright. On the disputed lot, a podium stood ready. Elias beamed, flanked by investors and reporters. He looked untouchable, seconds away from victory. He had no idea what was coming. Margaret Sterling was there too, standing stiffly at the edge of the crowd, arms crossed, watching everything with that judge's stare that could slice steel. The mayor shook hands, pretending this was a celebration instead of a scandal waiting to erupt. And just as Elias stepped up to the microphone to brag about revitalizing our dying town, a ripple of whispers moved through the crowd. It wasn't protesters. It wasn't police. It was Clara Vance, walking straight up the center aisle with her head high, dressed in her best blazer like she was stepping into a courtroom. And beside her was Jenny, carrying a large display board draped in a black cloth like it was a weapon. Elias's smile cracked. Clara, he said into the mic, his voice laced with theatrical pity. I'm shocked you'd show your face. This is a private event. Clara didn't stop walking. She planted herself directly in front of the podium and said, loud enough for every camera to catch it. It's not a private event, Elias. Because this isn't private land. The entire crowd went silent. Cameras pivoted. Reporters stepped forward. This was no longer a groundbreaking. It was about to become a reckoning. Elias motioned to security. Remove her. She's unstable. Two guards started forward, until a voice thundered from the side. Stop. Margaret Sterling stepped out from the VIP section, heels clicking like a gavel hitting wood. She moved to stand beside Clara, shoulder to shoulder. Let her speak, she commanded. The guards froze. Elias froze. Everyone froze. Because you could bully a town archivist, but not a retired judge with a reputation carved from granite. Jenny uncovered the board in one swift motion, ripping away the black cloth. Gasps shot through the audience. There it was, the massive blow-up of the 1922 photograph, the reflection in the barbershop window crystal clear, property of Municipal Orphanage Trust. Clara stepped to the mic, her voice steady, strong. No trace of the shaken woman from days earlier. You told this town your family built a legacy here, she said. But photography doesn't forget, and it doesn't lie. She traced her finger over the banner. In 1922, this land was a public trust. There is no record of a sale, only a suspicious courthouse fire in 1930 that conveniently destroyed the deeds. You didn't inherit a legacy, Elias. You inherited a crime scene. You are stealing this land from the very children it was meant to protect. The gasp this time wasn't shock. It was fury. Elias tried to laugh, but fear cracked through it. You're basing all this on a reflection? A trick of the light. This is ridiculous. But Margaret stepped forward and took the microphone. Actually, she said, I called the state archives this morning. They confirmed it. The trust deed still exists in the duplicate records. Clara is correct. This land is not yours, Mr. Thorne. It belongs to the people of Willow Creek. A dead silence swallowed the field. Then everything collapsed for Elias at once. Investors backing away, the mayor stepping aside, reporters surging forward. The groundbreaking became a legal disaster zone. Police escorted Elias away, not cuffed yet, but the investigation had begun. His empire cracked in real time, and the town turned its eyes to Clara. The woman they'd mocked, judged, abandoned. She was the one who saved them millions and protected their heritage. The photo meant to destroy her lost all its power. It was nothing now. A shadow, a cheap weapon that misfired. Later that afternoon, Margaret pushed open the doors of the Historical Society, now unlocked again. She found Clara and Jenny reshelving files. Margaret didn't apologize with flowery speeches. That wasn't her. You were right, Clara, she said simply. And I was wrong to judge you by a single moment in your past. You are the most qualified person to protect this town's history. Then she turned to Jenny. And you have a sharp eye. Have you ever considered law school? Jenny smiled but shook her head. No, I want to stay here. These archives still have secrets. She had learned the truth. History isn't dusty paper. It's a battlefield. And Clara had shown her how to fight on it. The town no longer saw Clara as the lady with old maps. They saw her as their guardian. Her bikini photo faded. The image that replaced it was her standing at that podium, exposing the truth in front of the entire town. She taught them something vital. A person's legacy isn't defined by their their weakest moment, but by their bravest one. We are not the snapshots taken of us. We are the full album we build. So the next time you look at an old photograph, look closer. Look at the reflections. Look at the shadows. The truth is often hiding right there in the corner, waiting for someone who dares to see it. And never let anyone use your past to blackmail your future. I'm the investigator, and I'll see you in the next file.